everyone, this is Micah with Silicon Valley Global News, and I wanted to ask, what do real developers think of the Magic Leap and how it compares to the HoloLens that shipped in 2016? So I was able to set up a call with Tim Martin, the CEO of FS Studio, and Nicole Lazaro, the president of ZeoPlay.
I'm Nicole Lazaro, and I'm the president and CEO of ZeoPlay. And I've been a veteran for the past 26 years in the game development industry. I have a consulting company called Zeo Design, and we've worked with all kinds of the leading game companies like Ubisoft and EA. And now we're working on a new game called Follow the White Rabbit. So this is, we were a launch partner with Vive, so this is like the pre-release Vive hardware here. I've decorated a little bit. It's a game about a magician who's been a charlatan all his life until one day his magic actually works and the rabbit disappears, wearing a priceless diamond bracelet. So now everyone wants to follow the white rabbit. It's a series of escape rooms, around the world. Coming soon to an AR, VR headset. So yeah, we're having a lot of fun with it.
I'm Tim Martin. I run FS Studio. We're an emerging tech, advanced technology company. And so our client base is Google and Virgin Orbits and Jaunt and all over the place, and Clorox, and it's all over. And we basically solve hard problems. And so if you want to do an emotion classifier or gesture recognition and have it run on an embedded system with custom hardware, we're your folks. We've got a play space here. We're playing with large, fun toys like motion platforms, and combining that with VR, FPV drones, and capturing 360-degree video and IMU data, and translating that back to these machines, or gaming, full motion and fully immersive gaming development. But we basically make advanced products, and it's a lot of fun.
Here with both of them. Hey guys.
Hey, how's it going?
How's it going?
Hi guys.
Pretty good. So I wanted to ask you a few questions. First of all, if each of you could take a chance and just describe your first impressions with the Magic Leap, and maybe just contrast that with your use of the HoloLens previously.
I'll let you go first.
All right, great. Well, I got the Magic Leap a little bit like a day ago, and it was a really interesting experience. I've been using the HoloLens. Obviously it's been out for a while, and there's some really interesting possibilities with what we're seeing on Magic Leap. I think with Magic Leap it was really I don't know. The thing I like the best, quite seriously, is the way that this headband works. I'm a kind of a geek for hardware, and having used like pretty much every headset that's out there, AR and VR, this is just like such a breeze to put on. So that's my first takeaway. But more seriously, I thought that there was some really great use of color, and the ability to walk through and mapping the space. I thought was really outstanding. Yeah, especially like the way that there's an Easter egg kind of thing, the way they map the space. That's something I really liked. Yeah. I don't know, what do you think, Tim?
Well, yeah, so I've had a little bit more time to play with these. We got our Magic Leap a little over a week ago, and so we've been futzing around and playing around. And there's definitely some standout things, differences. And the interesting thing is kind of trying to come in with metered expectations. There's a lot of haters out there. There's a lot of folks that are on one side of the fence or the other, and I really tried to clear my mind and come to this with a fresh brain. I was, overall, I'm impressed with the Magic Leap. Is it a three-year difference between the technology that you see in the Magic Leap versus the HoloLens? It's kind of a yes and no. There's a lot of things that, from a functionality standpoint, when you first put it on and use it, you may not notice. And things like the light field, the use of light field, eye tracking, stuff like that, which is absolutely a novel technology that's different than the HoloLens. There's not enough content out there yet to really kind of highlight that. There's certain things that I've noticed playing with the Magic Leap versus the HoloLens that kind of stuck out right away. And these are the big things, the foundational technologies. And so the mapping, so the SLAM technologies. And so they're very different in their approach, and sort of the functional output. What I noticed, just sort of anecdotally, is that the mapping, the granularity of the mapping works much better on the HoloLens, or on the Magic Leap than the HoloLens. So what you'll notice is that odd shapes, smaller shapes, things like that, they map, the mesh is more accurate and tighter, and it's quicker. It maps much faster than the HoloLens does. But it does have problems. It seems to have more problems with natural light pollution as well as black. So it really doesn't map well to black, whereas the HoloLens maps pretty good to black. And we'll probably try and take some screenshots and some videos so you can kind of see that. But that's a big thing. The other thing is sort of how much drift. And it's a big deal in AR. And there's been a lot of talking about the difference in drift and just how's the AR kit and AR core work, and their drift seems to be rock solid. Well, it's different because it's a pass-through camera and they can kind of fake it. But the drift specifically on AR objects that I noticed in the HoloLens versus the Magic Leap is the HoloLens actually seems to have less drift, and it seems to be more rock solid. So when you place an AR object and you walk around it and you look at it with as steady a head as you can, it seems like there's less drift. And with the drift that you get in the Magic Leap, it's not so much drift as it is jitteriness. So the AR objects, when they're in space, they jitter back and forth a little bit, and you'll notice that.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the tracking area, Nicole. What do you think about the stability of the tracking? Like Tim said, have you noticed that there's a difference between the stability of the objects you're looking at in the HoloLens and if they're less stable in the Magic Leap?
I think I would differ a little bit. I think that I would agree in terms of HoloLens being able to put a flat screen on a surface, that was very rock solid. But I really liked the in-world placement of objects, with Magic Leap a little bit better. So for the New York Times piece where the car, where that's that three-dimensional kind of car, it really did feel like it was in the room, and I would do this, and it didn't seem to, it seemed to be, for that particular app, it really did seem quite solid. Mm-hmm. And with HoloLens, it felt a little bit more of an emphasis on the panels or the floating holograms. Yeah. And maybe just the content I've consumed on this versus what's shipping with the Leap. Yeah. Yeah. I also really liked the color, the spectrum on the Magic Leap versus the HoloLens. I thought that the colors were a lot more vibrant and a lot more range of hues, a lot brighter. Yeah. And my HoloLens has got it tends to feel it has kind of a cast to it, kind of a yellow cast. It's fairly dark, whereas the brand new Magic Leap has got a lot more bright, vivid, colors, and obviously the content is that way.
The fact that the effective field of view in the Magic Leap is that much bigger. Now, again, you don't get full periphery. The field of view is still limited. Mm-hmm. I wasn't that turned off by the limited field of view in the Magic Leap, and it's wide enough for me now to really feel like I'm getting immersed. And so I know that it's getting dinged a bit for not having a super wide field of view, but I mean it's noticeably, but it's more than noticeably better. Mm-hmm. It's effectively giving you a pretty decent AR experience, and that I think when you've got that big car that the New York Times has in there, and you've got that wider field of view, I think you feel more immersed, and you don't notice any kind of the aberrations. The one thing I did notice is clipping, and so the clipping is very pronounced, more pronounced in the Magic Leap than it is in the HoloLens. And so, as you get closer to something, it'll start clipping sooner than you think.
So basically, the surface of the model, you clip into it, so
Correct.
You see the hollow bit
Correct.
behind you.
Yep. And so that can be a little annoying because you really, especially you want to get close and you want to see the little jumping astronaut dude and things like that. You'll start clipping away at the scene, which breaks the immersiveness. Right. And so that was one thing I noticed. I'm like, oh man, the clipping. But yeah.
Yeah, I haven't noticed that, but I'm gonna definitely after this or a little bit later we'll try that. For those who haven't tried the Magic Leap, I think we should just we've talked about this New York Times article. So in the Helios application, you can bring up the New York Times, and they have a newspaper article in a flat screen, a flat window. But then with a photograph, it's all about a volcanic ash-covered village, I guess. They have a photo of a truck that's covered in ash, and then that's a flat photo on a flat plane, kind of in 3D. But then what's cool about it is that that photo is actually projected onto a 3D model, and so you actually have a model of that car, of that truck, like in your world, and you can walk around it. And so there's this really interesting, like having artifacts that don't jump out of like a Harry Potter, in the Harry Potter kind of video window, and it looks kind of 3D. This is actually taking the photograph, and it's flat in the paper, but then you'd actually get a 3D version of it in your room. And I thought that was really, very, very powerful moment, and it feels a lot more real. I was having some issues with transparency with both of these, where things are, where you can see through things, and it works well for some things, ghosts or translucent objects and stuff like that. One of the challenges that all of these headsets have is to produce a convincing object in the world. We really want to not see, the room behind you, and the most easy opaque color, if you had the whole spectrum, is white. So just blast a lot of white, and you're not going to get much light in the background. But in a lot of my games, I want these beautiful, like parchment pages, pieces of paper, and I want these boxes that are puzzles, and I want to be able to have that really floating in the world, not just as a illusion, but I really want that.
With AR, they're going to have to do more like volumetric capture, and that's why like the LeBron James thing is kind of interesting. But if you can create more volumetric objects in spaces that people can really interact with, then all of a sudden, I think really, really interesting humanitarian pieces, like what's going on in the border or what's happening in the environment, all these kinds of things, you can really feel, you get the emotional impact because you've got the context, you're in place. That is super powerful to me.
I wanted to ask you also, what is the wearability of these devices? Do you think that developers are going to be able to create really magical experiences with these devices? And one more question is, where can these devices be taken? What environments will they work in? Will they work outdoors? Do you need certain environments indoors? And how much space do you think people will really need?
I'll let you start with that.
Oh yeah, so I've been the Magic Leap has got some really interesting things. We've been doing demos in the past day or so that I've had it. I guess it is officially 2 days now. I've taken it a lot of places. So I was in our studio. We have a couple rooms, and it worked well, even though our rooms are very cluttered and creative and very narrow and kind of not boxy. Worked really, really, really well there. But I also took it to the Silicon Valley Virtual Reality Meetup, SVVR, and tried it in 3 environments there, and it worked. It worked well. And then last night we had trouble because one of the rooms was all white, and so there wasn't a lot of details. Like, okay, this is just not gonna work because it's not gonna map to that. And then I was talking with Suzanne last night, and she was saying that she was observing that it seems like the tracking exercises, at least on the Leap, tend to go to the highest contrast points in the world. I mean, have you seen? So they're like, you're constantly. She was saying like, oh, we're constantly like looking at the lights, and when we don't really need to track the lights, right? Or in the surface. But I think that does make sense in terms of how it might operate.
Sure, yeah, the algorithms they require texture. So they're pulling features. Yep. So the more texture something has, the more contrast it's going to have. I mean, that's why it works great on these brick walls.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This
is an awesome warehouse, by the way. This is like a super secret location. I had to show my ID like 5 times to get here. So I'm super impressed.
It's our play space. It's super fun. We do some autonomous drone flights and cars and fun stuff.
Yeah, what is that thing?
That's our little autonomous car track,
awesome.
And then we've got our motion platform for VR.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting a ride after this. Okay.
You definitely have to. Okay. So Micah's question. So yes. So this space is pretty good size, and so It works, the tracking and the mapping and all of that, it definitely works pretty well in this big space. And I tried, like I made the LeBron basketball court as big as I could, almost like life size. And that was interesting. I did notice, the thing that was really interesting about the mapping is that actually the HoloLens maps far better than the Magic Leap does. So I was able to map the far walls of the warehouse easier with the HoloLens than with the Magic Leap. The Magic Leap, I had to get closer to it before it would start mapping and things like that. And then I started looking at, so infrared, I wanted to see how much infrared light bleed from the sunlight would matter. And so they both mapped okay. They both took a little longer to map if there was a lot of sunlight and sunlight bleed. But the Magic Leap did work better in sunlight. And then I did try outside. They both kind of stink outside. It's just not, it's just not the environment it's designed for. I mean, it's designed for walls, it's designed for planes, it's designed to not have a ton of light pollution from infrared, other natural infrared lighting sources. Now, it's fusing a bunch of different data together to do the mapping. But yeah, it's going to matter. But like the Magic Leap definitely is a little bit more robust with sort of infrared light bleed. So that was interesting.
So the Magic Leap, there's a lot more to the hardware, and it's making me think that this might be more powerful in terms of the hardware's ability to allow developers to create magical experiences. That includes the eye tracking and includes the motion controller and some more sophisticated hand tracking compared to the HoloLens. That's my understanding. When you look at the additional user interface, user experience that the hardware has for the Magic Leap versus the HoloLens, do you think that you're going to be able to create more that developers will be able to create more magical experiences with the Magic Leap, and maybe spec? And also, on that same note, what about things like occlusion? Can characters hide behind real-world objects? And can characters can you have multiplayer experiences? So have you seen that?
Yeah, for sure. So that was an interesting thing for me, is actually the UI and the sort of the UX experience differences between the HoloLens and the Magic Leap. So the gaze-based HoloLens is fairly foolproof, and so it's funny. It's old school, but it's easier to navigate around because you're just moving your head around. It's got its it obviously has its limitations. It's suboptimal. But what I thought was really interesting is out of the box, the HoloLens has the gesture recognizer and the bloom and the clicky thing and all that stuff, and it works pretty well. I mean, really robust. And out of the box, they are not doing gesture classification or gesture recognition or anything like that in the Magic Leap yet. I think there is an app that uses the gesture, but it's not in the core launcher kind of space. The other thing that you asked was about occlusion, and it does do occlusion. So you can have little dudes kind of like hiding behind couches and stuff like that. If it maps the mesh and maps everything well, it'll occlude, and guys can walk out behind stuff and pop out. The create thing is a blast. I mean, you put 10 dinosaurs down, and little army men are getting stomped, and they're running all over the place, and you get a jellyfish going through. It's pretty fun.
And a UFO, don't forget the UFO.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would totally agree. And actually, a fun way to do it is we have, when you get this box that opens up, right? And I loved how the experience would walk behind the box lid, right? Which was a kind of a temporary thing. It's oh wow, that's really kind of a fun space. So two parts to the question. I think the first is that technology-wise, I think there's absolutely a bigger toolkit as a developer, and an engineer with the Magic Leap than what I've been exposed to on HoloLens. So they're worked with eye tracking systems. So I actually helped Jim Margraf and iFluence create a UI for for iFluence that was like hands-free eye tracking only. So you could word process, you could, like send videos, you could order off Amazon, all just using your eyes, hands-free. So I do know this space very well in terms of like what the possibilities are. They got sold to Google, I think, a couple years ago. So I think that just having, nice eye tracking is going to be just amazing. Back to Micah's question about like, can you create more magical experiences, right? So going beyond the hardware. And again, with the kind of with the 4 keys in mind, is that the tools that you create have different emotional affect, different emotions around them. And the use of those, tools, the way that we push a button or we might navigate a menu, all creates emotions inside us. And that's much more magical on Magic Leap, in my opinion, than in HoloLens. HoloLens is, they're both amazing technologies, but it's a lot more enterprise and corporate and like straightforward. And so if you need to do that kind of business information delivery, training, fire safety or something like that, it's got the emotion profile of this UI and UX really maps to that kind of content. Magic Leap, though, is a lot more magical in the UI. So you've got these round, menu buttons that spin around. Everything has an animation that, comes up, blooms up, and goes away. You are using this, which can be, and even this, the haptics on the controller are really, really sophisticated. It's sort of like, there's a lovely set of haptics available like on the Apple Watch. Same thing here. It's like it's talking to you in your hand, which I really love, and we both love the little lights that come on here, and also on the light
lights.
pack. Yeah, the light pack that's on the device itself.
So how about all-day wearability? Is there how does it feel when you're wearing it, and is there eye strain, and do you have any motion sickness from using it?
I love this. I love this little thing, and it just snaps in with magnets. It just snaps in with magnets. And I felt, again, I'm a huge fan. I love this. It's just great. You just like put it. When I do demos, I've done like 50 or 60 demos, 60 at least now, in the past 24 hours. So I just say put it on your nose, and then and I'm going to put it on here, and then it's just that, right? It's just that, and that's just lovely. And you just like it hugs you. Right? It's not like this little, I'm not tightening a screw like an Iron Maiden thing back here, and I'm not having to do, the HoloLens has this, I have to have a degree in like Sketchfab or something, to figure out like what angle, you have 2 angles that I got to fit on my head, and then I also have a little tortuous screw in the back here.
And the cantilever.
And it's just like, well, wait, does it go this way or that way? I never remember. So this is like, easy in, easy out. I've only worn it for about 2 hours so far on the Magic Leap. Well, probably at 3. It does feel a lot lighter though than the HoloLens, at least on my face. It really feels a lot more lighter.
It's definitely more, the HoloLens is definitely more comfortable since they put all the compute into the waist.
No, which one? The
Magic Leap is more comfortable because they put all the compute in the waistband.
Yeah,
you get this cantilever, basically it's laptop grade hardware here. And it's just, you start getting the classic nose pinch and you have a hard time breathing after a while, blah blah. You got to fiddle with this thing to get the angle just right.
Yeah.
So for all day wearability, the Magic Leap is definitely more comfy.
Yeah, and I think part of the question was also like wearability in terms of like motion sickness or being able to do that. I was pretty active in the Magic Leap, and I did not get the feeling of like I'm staring at a screen too long.
I never did motion sick.
Where I have felt like I'm computer tired now. I don't want to stare at a screen anymore.
You get motion sick with some of this?
I don't do. It's not motion sickness. It's just like, okay, I've been in here a long time, and I just feel like I feel eye strain, I guess, more than anything.
Yeah. The light field style technology here should reduce eye strain.
It feels
rather than
better.
Single plane. So I mean, it should.
Kind of wanted to hear from Tim, like, looking, maybe given that you've had a week with this, looking 6 months down the road or a year down the road, as a developer, are you excited about developing on this? Would you recommend that your clients develop projects on this? And sort of like the same question to Nicole. And what do you think the potential market for this is? Will this be something that companies want to show their stuff off in showrooms? To raise, maybe they want to raise capital with it. Is this a great demo device, or is this something that's actually, do you think, good to develop on because maybe consumers will start buying it, or maybe the developers will, just develop on this, create amazing experiences, and then we'll wait for cheaper hardware. So I'm really looking forward to the long-term, viewpoint. 6 months to a year to 2 years. Should developers be developing on this now? What is the the big long-term picture for Magic Leap, for developers, for customers, as you see it?
Got it. So I would say, what we're seeing, the hardware is still expensive, so it's still not a consumer device, unless you're, driving a Porsche. You have $4,000, well now $3,000, and a $2,500 device. And so what we see with people asking us to make content for these, it's mostly enterprise still, or it's can be location-based, or it can be experiential. If there's a client or customer interface, it is usually within an environment, say like a car dealership or something like that. If somebody is, or cruise ships, enters that. So it is a enterprise or corporate to customer interface. It is not, we're not seeing a lot of people wanting to make games or things where you're creating content that would be straight to a customer base where you'd have somebody like this at home. This is still at a price point where it's an early adopter. Hasn't jumped the chasm yet, and so that's what we're seeing in the types of applications and the types of things. So for on the enterprise level, remote presence. So it's like tech support. If you have a field technician or a field engineer, and you can have a remote engineer that can help the on-site person with diagnosis, kind of things like that, for training and corporate training, disaster training, things like that, situational awareness. It's it's great for that. And as I said, like if you're an entertainment company and you want to create something and you want to leverage the hype and the gee whiz around AR and have a very high quality experience, so movie theaters, car dealerships, cruise ships, hotels, all those kinds of things. Then
location based.
Yep, very much LBE stuff. So it's still much in the enterprise. I think that isn't going to change until you start getting a price point around, say, the Oculus Go. So just to go back to what Micah was saying, and we'll just focus on entertainment. The medium. So for location-based and fixed location, VR is absolutely a better entertainment medium than AR. The whole point of AR is context and being immersed in your context. AR gets more powerful the more context you put into it. So as you're moving through space, as you're moving through time, as you're moving around your environment, that's why Pokemon Go is so fun.
I really, and again, game developer here, is that I really think that AR gaming is going to be a lot of fun. And then with the caveat, and you've probably heard me say this before, for my fans out there, but it's with new kinds of mechanics. And so what a lot of the content is doing is it's like what created engagement, those tight loops, the hard fun, the core loop of the game, or the serious fun, or the meta loop of the game. Those things were all designed for 2D flat screen, right? And it's the constraint. That's why you run for 40 miles an hour in Doom, or Call of Duty. You run at literally 40 miles an hour to make it exciting. Game Development Dynasty has this whole book, big fat book of different tricks to make these games fun. Yep. AR, VR, you're gonna throw that out, especially AR. And so, there's some really good hints of where games are gonna be on these devices, which is why we're jumping in with both feet in the XR universe.
Thank you very much for watching. That's all the video we have time for today, folks. I hope you have a great and wonderful day.